At the end of this week's parasha, Parashat Noach, we have the story of the Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Bavel. This is the generation known as the Dora Palaga, the generation of the dispersion, where the whole world got together and waged war against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. They got together Be'eretz Shinar. They got into this place called Shinar. It's the land of Bavel. It's Babylonia, Iraq. They found a bika. They found a valley, and in that valley they built this gigantic, tall Migdal, this tall tower to wage a war against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And amongst the Chazal, there's all different questions. What were they really trying to do? Is this Avodah Zarah? Is this actual a war? Is it denying Hashem? But they waged this battle against the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then ultimately we know that Hashem then confuses all of their languages, disperses them amongst the world. We now have 70 nations. Al ken kara shema Bavel, kisham balal Adonai sefat kol haaretz. The place is called Bavel because there it was Balal. There Hashem confused all the language. Umisham fitzam Adonai al pnei kol haaretz, and from there Hashem dispersed them all. They scattered all the nations over the face of the whole earth. So we have ourselves the story of the Tower of Bavel. So I saw a beautiful idea in the Megaleh Amukot, where the Megaleh Amukot notes the importance of Bavel throughout Jewish history. You know, Iraq plays a big role, even in modern day Jewish history, but we have ourselves the Bavel period, which is over here in the Migdal Bavel, and then we're going to have ourselves in the future, we have ourselves the Bavel period in the Galut Bavel. We have ourselves the exile in Bavel, with the evil king Nebuchadnezzar, where he created this great cell and this great Avodah Zarah that he had placed also into the towers there of Bavel. Actually, I was once in the Israel Museum in Yerushalayim, and the tour guide was saying that in the generation of the Tower of Bavel, they really had these towers of Avodah Zarah that existed in Bavel. So says the Megaleh Amukot, the importance though of Bavel in the bigger picture. So he says as follows. Vehine bikat dura sham ha'amin Nebuchadnezzar tzelem. He says we have in the story of Nebuchadnezzar in our galut in Bavel. There was the evil king Nebuchadnezzar, and he put an idol in this valley in Dura. So we have this valley bikat Dura that's in Bavel, and that's there was a tzelem. And in the footnote over here in the fancy Megaleh Amukot, so he says that he's trying to now connect that Bavel always seems to have this history of Avodah Zarah. It seems to always keep coming back to this concept. So we have it in our generation, in our Parshat Noach, and then we have it in the future generation with Nebuchadnezzar in our exile to Bavel. So he says as follows: why? What's so special about Bavel, or what's so infamous about Bavel, that's where there's Avodah Zarah? So he writes, Ki misham nivreu agevotam shel Adam harishon. He says, interestingly, because that is where the buttocks, the tachat, the rump of Adam harishon, the bottom part of Adam harishon, that comes from Bavel. Now, what is that all about? Okay, so he's actually hinting to a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Lamed Chet Amud Aleph, the very bottom, to Lamed Chet Amud Bet on the top, is discussing different opinions. How was Adam Rishon created? And we spoke last week's parasha, the formation of man, Adam from the Adama, Adam Adameh, he wants to become godlike. Says the Gemara, Tanya Hayar Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir used to teach, Adam Rishon mikol haolam kulo hutzbar afaro. You don't want to know where man came from? All the dust of all the earth, Hashem took from all of the Adama, and he brought it all together to create man, and therefore man is really made up of the whole earth. Okay, that's his opinion. He gives a couple of pesukim for that. Then says, Amar Rav Oshaya. Now Rav Oshaya, Mishmei Derav. Rav Oshaya says the name of the Rav. He gets a little bit more specific. He wants to now tell us where exactly did each part of man come from, like what parts came from what part of the world. So he says as follows. Adam Rishon gufo mi Bavel. The body of Adam Rishon came from Bavel. Verosho me'eretz Yisrael. And the head, the holiest part, the Kedushah part, the brain, the head comes from Eretz Yisrael. So the head of Adam Rishon, Eretz Yisrael, the body from Bavel, the Ivarav, Mishar Aratzot, and the rest of his body parts come from the rest of the world. And in the Maharsha there explains that the most important parts of the body, or the heart and Bavel. When we say Gufo from Bavel and the other Ivarav from the Mishar Aratzot, so it's telling you that the important parts outside of the head, outside of the Rosh, that comes from Eretz Yisrael, the other important parts of the body comes from Bavel, the Ivarav, and the different parts of the body, Mishar Aratzot, and the lesser extremities, that's from the rest of the world. Then says the Gemara, Agvotab, what about the buttocks? Amar Rav Acha me'akra de agma. Where did it come from? It comes from, Rashi explains these words, as a deep valley that existed in Bavel, meaning, if you have to create man, and now the buttocks, I saw this in the footnote in the Megaleh Amukot by us, says this as well, there's a lot of flesh that makes up the buttocks. So therefore, you have to find a spot in the world where you have this emek, where you have this valley, and it's from there, it's from that dirt that part of Adam Rishon was created. Actually, the Ben Ish Chai comes along over here, and he has a different girsa based on the Arizal that actually focuses majorly on that. It seems the Megaleh Amukot is going in this direction as well. That there seems to be that the buttocks, the agavot, the agvotav, that becomes the real part that symbolizes what Bavel is all about, and why is that? So first off, we saw in this valley we have in our parasha the creation of the Tower of Bavel, and we also have in Nebuchadnezzar he goes to Bikat Dura. That's where he's putting his avodah zarah. So it seems to be this valley really is a place of evil, of avodah zarah, which is now going to be hinted to in the buttocks. Okay. And in the footnote of my Megaleh Amukot, he actually explains even further that we know that it's the agvotav, it's the buttocks that are used to get rid of the extras when we eat our food, all the tzoah, all the leftovers, all the stuff that's not that's the excrement that's not important for the body that we want trying to get rid of. It's the bad stuff for the body. It leaves from that section. So that's a hint to the sitra achara. It's a hint to the yetzahara. It's a hint to tum'ah, and that's why avodah zarah seems to be coming from that area. And that's why Bavel is a place of major avodah zarah. Okay, so let's go back to the Megaleh Amukot. So he says that Nebuchadnezzar had built his tzela, he built his pesel, he built his idol in the bik'ah, in this valley of Bavel. Why? Because that's the place. Ki misham nivru agvotav shel Adam harishon, v'lachen nikra shema Shinar, and that's why the place is called Shinar. In our parasha, it's called Shinar, the emek of Shinar, the bik'ah of Shinar, the valley of Shinar. Because why? Because Shinar is a language of Shesham nena'aru. Because there they shook off kol klipot, all of the negative klipot, these negative energies, all of that was shaken away. V'lachen nikret Bavel, and that's why it's called Bavel. We said Bavel, Balal, Hashem confuses, Hashem mixes, Hashem is shaking off, scattering the people afterwards. V'lachen nikret Bavel. Shenit Arvu Sham Harben Tosot Teorot, because a lot of holy sparks got hidden over there, got lost over there, got mixed over there. Meaning Bavel on the one hand has major avodah zarah, major negativity, but also major big stuff, major kedusha comes out of Bavel. Even the language Aramit, the language of Bavel is considered to be a holy language. So he says that it's a place where there's a lot of nitzotzot, and therefore it's a lot of work to try to bring it out. He says the Megaleh Amukot. And that's why, because there were so many nitzotzot, so many sparks of kedusha were hidden there in Bavel. That's why the Torah Sheba'al Peh is going to come out of Bavel. This, we think about Bavel. I'm thinking now, Bavel is this place where languages get mixed up, where you have this whole concept of speech taking place and the difficulty of speech. Well, the Torah Sheba'al Peh is that Torah that comes out of the Peh. Maybe we can add to that. It's coming from Bavel. But the Megaleh Amukot is saying that we have to now work hard. The Torah Sheba'al Peh, all of our labor that we do to try to learn the Torah, and it's all that's hinted to Bavel, because that was a place of major kedusha, but it was a place where the kedusha was hidden away, and therefore we're going to see all of these stories taking place. On the one hand, we spoke in the past that the whole generation and this generation of the dispersion, they had achadut, they had certain good midot, but they used it in the wrong kind of ways. It's a place of kedusha. It's a place that you could fall if you fall to the negative forces over there. Says the Megaleh Amukot. So this is the secret behind the pasuk in Tehillim that says, "Askir Rahav uBavel." I'm going to mention Rahav and Bavel. Now, what is Rahav and Bavel? Rahav is known as the angel of Mitzrayim, because the Sar of Mitzrayim, his name is Rahav. We spoke about that a couple of years ago when we spoke about the angels of Mitzrayim. So I'm going to remember Mitzrayim. I'm going to remember Egypt and Bavel. So he says the Megaleh Amukot, just like in Mitzrayim, and I was going to say that Egypt and Bavel share something very similar. There were places where there was major nitzotzot, there was major kedusha, major sparks that were hidden there, that we had to go in there and make a really big a really big avodah, and if we do that big avodah, we make our big tikkunim, we can bring out the kedusha from Mitzrayim, bring out the kedusha from Bavel. Now we know in general, Chazal tell us that the Mitzrayim itself was a place of sexual immorality. It's known as the Ervat Haaretz, the nakedness of the land. And now we're saying that Bavel is the Batak. So we have ourselves again the same concept that both of these places have to deal with Erva. They deal with nakedness. But therefore, if we do the right avodah, that's why Yosef is the first one has to really go down to Egypt, because Yosef is the Od Brit Kodesh. He's the Yesod. He's the Tikkun Brit. He's doing Brit Milan. Everybody over there, because you have to have these tikkunim taking place in both Mitzrayim and in Bavel. And he says, and that's why that's why we have to go down to Egypt in the first place to bring out those sparks. And that's why Avram also, we needed a Maaseh Avot, Siman Labanim. So we needed Avram to go down to Mitzrayim to help bring about the bringing out of those sparks of holiness in Mitzrayim. And skipping a little bit, says the Megaleh Amukot, Ki ger yezaracha be'eretz lo lahem. When God makes the covenant with Abraham, He tells them, your children are going to be foreigners in a land not their own. Be'eretz lo lahem, shiramaz b'rashei tevot balal. Be'eretz lo lahem is the same letters, the rashei tevot, the first letters, bet lamed lamed is balal, kedeit margabei bavel, kisham balal Hashem, just like it says in our pasuk, in our parasha, that there Hashem confused the language. V'chein amar, askir Rahav u'Bavel, and that's why the pasuk in Tehillim is saying, it's mentioning both Egypt, Rahav, and Bavel, and it's hinted to Bavel, just like Avram is going to have to go to Mitzrayim to make a fixing when he goes down there, there's also a hint that a fixing has to take place in Bavel as well. שבבל נדמה בעניין זה למצרים, שהיו שם ניצוצות טהורות, וכמו שלא היו יכולים ישראל לקבל תורה שבכתב עד אחר גלות מצרים, and he says now beautifully, just like the Jewish people couldn't get the Torah שבכתב, we couldn't get the Ten Commandments, we couldn't get the written Torah until we left Mitzrayim, meaning until we made the tikkun of Mitzrayim, brought out those sparks of Mitzrayim. And therefore we also couldn't complete the Torah Shebaal Peh without Bavel. So Mitzrayim is now going to correspond to the Torah Shebechtav, Bavel to Torah Shebaal Peh, and we had to go do our time in each of these places to make those tikkunim. And then he says beautifully, that's why right after Avram leaves Mitzrayim, then right afterwards we have the whole story of the Daled Melachim, of those four kings that wage a war, and they're Be'emek HaMelech, they're in the valley. What's the valley? The valley is Al Bavel Sheyamukah. It's Bavel, that's that valley. And then we have Amraphel, who's the Melech of Bavel. So we have ourselves this whole war first against Mitzrayim, then he has this war against one of the kings of Bavel, who seems to be even one of the more bigger rulers of those kings. So Avraham himself is having this he's having to do a certain battle against Mitzrayim, then another battle against Bavel, because these are the two places that in the future we as Jewish people are going to have to go there into Galut, and out of Mitzrayim will arise the Torah Shebichtav, and then out of Bavel will arise the Torah Shebaal Peh. And then the Megaleh Amukot closes with a beautiful remez. He says, "V'zeh sod sheramaz bazeh haparasha b'harigata melachim." This is the secret in the death of these four kings, the Melachim, because the pasuk there says, "Vayishma Avraham ki nishba achiv." Avram heard that his brother got taken captive. V'tkor echushav ben achi Avraham, and he heard that Lot, his nephew, and his and all of his rechush, all of his property were taken captive. So if you take the letters, shekatav Arizal b'Sefer HaKavanot, says the Arizal, shehi rashi tevot rava. If you take the words rechusho ben achi, Reish bet aleph for the first Reish Tevot, it's Rava. Now we know we have a famous saying that the Gemara, the Talmud, is considered to be the Havayot de Abaye veRava. It's considered to be the back and forths of Abaye and Rava. They represent the Gemara. Now, interesting. So if they represent the Gemara, so what happened to Abaye? Because we know that the halacha is like Rava, except for Yal Kegam, except for those specific cases. Every other halacha is like Rava. So Rava would definitely represent the halachot that are going to come out of the Gemara. So therefore, in Lot himself, Shebeoto Perek Nitkaven Avraham Leotzin Tzot Shel Rava Shayatakua Belot. At that moment, Abraham's kavanah, when he's going to fight against those four kings and to go save Lot, was to go save Rava, to go save the Torah Shebaal Peh, meaning Abraham is doing the spiritual fight right now in order to be zocheh in the future for us to have the machlokot of Rava and Abaye, and particularly the halacha that's nifsak in almost every case like Rava, that's coming out hinted to in this whole war. So it's no coincidence that our parasha, when we're talking about the founding of the world, Bavel is going to come and play a very big role, because Bavel is going to be the place of the Torah Shebaal Peh. Bavel is going to be the place where there's going to be major nitzotzot of Kedusha that are going to be hidden in with a certain type of tumah. Now, truthfully, Mitzrayim itself has a little bit of a hint in our parasha as well. And I'm wondering, if we talk about Mitzrayim being the Erevata Aretz, that there seems to be different kinds of tumah when it comes to Mitzrayim and when it comes to Bavel, different kinds of tumah, the generation of the flood versus the generation of the dispersion, Dora Palaga versus the door of the Mabul, and we know Chazal try to compare and contrast, but they represent different sins in Jewish history, because the Mekubalim bring down that just like in our parasha at the very beginning, all of the sinners are going to have to drown inside the water, so too at the very end of the Mitzrayim story, they're going to drown in the Yam Suf. So it seems to be that we also have this connection of both these two big events, but also we're going to fast forward to right to Avraham's story, the very end of our parasha. We're going to bring up Avraham, because Avraham himself is going to be dealing with both of these places. starting in Mitzrayim, dealing with the nitzotzot there, doing his maasevot simon labanim when he deals with the power of Mitzrayim, because ultimately his kedusha that he's going to bring about in that place is going to give us our koach. That when we leave Mitzrayim, we're going to be zochet Torah shebichtav. And then his next war with the four kings, primarily there with the head king over there at Bavel, when he's going to win that war as well, saving Lot, saving Rava in the remez of the Megaleh Amukot, he's going to be able to bring about that maseh avot, that spiritual energy, so that we ourselves, when we're going to be in our exile in Bavel, we're going to be able to come out and bring out those nitzotzot with the Torah Sheba'al Peh with our Gemara. Shabbat Shalom.